Please subscribe to our channel, Pacific Front Untold, and be sure to leave a comment after watching a video. From ordinary men to political leaders and emperors, it was not uncommon before the communist takeover in China for men to have multiple wives and concubines. The Kuomintang leaders were no exception, and their wives and mistresses proved to be more than simply idle partners of men with great political power and ambitions. Many of the wives and mistresses found ways to become deeply involved in Chinese politics during their lifetimes, from helping their husbands or partners to taking on government roles that granted them immense power and voice. Sun Yat-sen, Chiang Kai-shek, and Wang Jingwei remain at the historical forefront of the Kuomintang. Yet the women who stood by their sides throughout personal and political turmoil played an essential role in determining the future of China. Many wives and mistresses, from Soong Mei-ling to Chen Bijun, found themselves instrumental in their country's socio-political transformations. Some of these women were pushed into the limelight, while others were forced to stay hidden and have nearly been forgotten by history. However, in the end, each of them left behind an important and unique political legacy. Sun Yat-sen's first wife was Lu Mu-chen, a village woman his family chose for him in an arranged marriage that Sun claimed was a marriage of convenience. The two of them rarely spent time together due to his work as a revolutionary, although they did have 3 children together: Sun Ke, Sun Yan, and Sun Wan. Because of Sun's revolutionary activity and his failed uprisings against the Qing dynasty, Lu and their children were often at risk. She took them, as well as Sun's mother, to live in Hawaii with his brother. After funding many of Sun's uprisings, his brother eventually went bankrupt and had to move to Hong Kong, where Lu and the children also went. During Sun's exile in Japan, he met Kaoru Atsuki in 1898, when she was only 10 years old. Several years later, after persistently asking for her hand in marriage, Sun finally got her father's approval and married Atsuki in 1903. Despite Atsuki giving him a daughter, Fumiko, 2 years after their marriage, Sun never publicly addressed their relationship and left Japan, effectively breaking off contact with Atsuki and his daughter. Atsuki had little money or support and was finally forced to put Fumiko up for adoption. It was only during the 1950s when Fumiko finally learned the truth about her parents, though she and her son, Sun's grandson, were eventually able to connect with her past when they visited Atsuki before her death. Before this, however, their relationship was kept a secret to avoid tainting Sun's reputation. While studying in Hong Kong, Sun met Chen Kui-fen, who would become not just a longtime partner, but also his partner in revolution. From 1910 to 1912, Chen joined Sun, Lu, their children, and Sun's brother in Binsheng. Chen and Lu were said to have gotten along well and saw each other as sisters. Despite being relatively unknown in history, Chen greatly supported Sun. Not only did she care for him by cooking and doing his laundry, but she also risked her life by helping him deliver secret messages and smuggle weapons. Even when Sun left Malaya, Chen went to Ipoh to fundraise for the revolution. Eventually, Sun met Soong Mei-ling through his connections with the Soong family and because she was working as his secretary. Wanting to aid the revolution, Soong rebelled against her family to marry Dr. Sun. Her family disapproved of him due to his age, and his previous marriages went against their Christian beliefs. She joined him during his exile in Tokyo, where she assisted him as a translator and correspondent. Writing to a friend, she said, "I hope someday that all my labors and sacrifices will be repaid by seeing China freed from the bondage of a tyrant and a monarchist and stand as a republic." Sun quickly divorced Lu and cut off contact with Chen, who was banned from speaking about their relationship to protect Sun and Soong. Lu moved to Macau and eventually died there in 1952. As Sun went off to marry Soong and continue his revolutionary activities, Liu took on the responsibilities of raising their children and led mostly a private life. As for Chen, she moved back to Malaya, where she adopted a daughter. Despite Sun's abandonment, it is believed that she kept 2 of Sun's gifts until her death, a ring and his watch. Her private life meant that she has largely disappeared into the depths of history, often seen only as a concubine rather than Sun's partner. Sun's new wife, Soong, led an eventful life as a prominent political figure and as Madame Sun Yat-sen. She continued to be politically active and supported Sun during his endeavors, using her education and experiences in America to act as a translator. However, Soong's relationship with Sun created tension within the Soong family. Besides her own parents' opposition to the marriage, she also disapproved of her brother-in-law, Chiang Kai-shek's actions. Despite Sun's death in 1925, she remained deeply involved in Chinese politics. Soong supported the left wing of the Kuomintang and criticized Chiang's regime, despite her sister Mei-ling being married to Chiang. During the Sino-Japanese War, she founded the China Welfare Institute, organized hospitals, and did fundraising. When Mao Zedong came into power in 1949, establishing the new People's Republic of China, he chose Soong to be one of the vice chairmen of the Central People's Government Council. Little is known about Chiang Kai-shek's first wife, Mao Fu-mei, a country girl 5 years his senior from Funghua, Shusheng. They had an arranged marriage in 1901, but ultimately divorced in 1921. During their marriage, Chiang met Yao Yesheng, a sing-song girl who became one of his concubines, and later took on raising Chiang Wei-kuo, Chiang's adopted son. As for Mao, despite the unhappy marriage, she bore Chiang's only biological son, Chiang Ching-kuo. In the end, she was killed in a Japanese air raid in December 1939 at the age of 57. It was during Mao and Chiang's marriage when Chen Jiru, also known as Jenny, entered the picture. Chiang quickly became fascinated by Chen, who was only 13 when he was 32, and persistently pursued her despite her attempts to avoid him. Finally, Chen's mother accepted Chiang's marriage request. Chiang convinced Chen that he was only truly in love with her, claiming that he and Mao had a loveless marriage and that Yao was only his concubine because he felt bad after she had an incident that disfigured her face and ended her career. Chiang and Chen wed in 1921, and as his wife, Chen was politically involved with the revolution then taking place in China. She joined Chiang as he traveled from city to city, writing about her experiences in her diary. This diary would later become the basis of her memoir, though this was met with opposition from Chiang's administration, who attacked the book's agent and stopped its publication. Chen died in 1971, but 18 years after her death, Professor Lloyd Eastman found the manuscript and published a Chinese and English version titled Chiang Kai-shek's Secret Past, the memoir of his second wife, Chen Qiushu. Perhaps the wife of Chiang Kai-shek most people are familiar with is Soong Mei-ling. As Madame Chiang Kai-shek, she was the face of China during the 1930s and 1940s, representing the new relationship between the United States and China. Having attended school in the United States at Wesley College and then lived in China after graduating, Soong acted as a bridge between the two countries. Even before her marriage to Chiang, Soong was already involved in Chinese politics. After Yuan Shikai took over China in 1912, Soong and her family joined the Kuomintang in Tokyo to help them strategize ways to overthrow Yuan. She remained politically active when the Soong family returned to China, where she joined reform efforts and participated in civic activities in Shanghai. Soong and Chiang met amidst the turmoil and political tension of the 1920s. Their desire for China to become a modern nation resulted in a blossoming relationship, though their political interests also aided this. As a result, Soong's family could maintain their power and status, while Chiang could obtain the support of a powerful family and become Sun Yat-sen's brother-in-law. The two of them met while he was still married to Chen, but for him, the opportunity to marry Soong was too politically important to ignore. So he convinced Chen to attend an American college for 5 years, even promising to resume their marriage when she returned. However, after she left, Chiang denied knowing her and claimed she was never his wife, leaving her heartbroken. Soong and Chiang married in 1927, and she used her new role as Madame Chiang Kai-shek and experiences in China and the United States to help redefine a new China and establish herself as not just a first lady, but as a powerful political figure. She worked with American and Christian organizations, initiated Western-style reforms, and encouraged Chinese women to participate in civic life and activities. Drawing international attention, Soong used her unique background, powerful speeches, and diplomatic visits to rise to the forefront of nationalist politics and appeal to American audiences. Her efforts led to more American support for China during World War II and empowered many Chinese Americans who held her and her accomplishments in high regard. Soong and Chiang worked together as a global power couple and were even Time magazine's Man and Woman of the Year in 1937, though she was considered the most powerful woman in the world in her own right. Soong led a more private life after Chiang's death in 1975. She moved to Taiwan for a few years, but ultimately decided to move to the United States, where she made occasional public appearances, lived to the age of 105, and ultimately died in New York. With a life that touched 3 centuries, she left behind an immense legacy that is remembered by both China and America today. Like many of the other wives and mistresses, Chen Bijun led an equally noteworthy and politically involved life as the wife of Wang Jingwei. They met in Southeast Asia, where Wang was working on anti-Manchu revolutionary work in 1907 and officially wed in 1912 when she was 20 years old. Chen eventually joined the Tongmenhui, an underground resistance movement and precursor to the Kuomintang. Throughout the 1920s and 1930s, Chen Bijun remained close to Wang, helping him as he worked for the Kuomintang. As a political figure, Chen gained a reputation for being strong, ambitious, forceful, and arrogant, and even accepted being called Mr. Chen to emphasize her strength and to show that she was equivalent to the other male political figures. When Wang Jingwei was the leader of the left-leaning Kuomintang faction and the head of the Wuhan government, Chen took on the responsibilities and status of an unofficial First Lady of China. During this period, she helped her husband's regime combat Chiang, leading anti-Chiang movements, and even acting as the lead negotiator in a settlement with Chiang. As his wife, Chen found ways to establish her power and influence, with Wang stating that, "She is also my revolutionary comrade, and for that reason, I don't find it easy to make important decisions without considering her views." During wartime, even as her husband was losing power within the Kuomintang, she was active in Guangdong in gaining military support for her husband and communicating with other Kuomintang leaders. Wang, however, was losing hope about successfully fighting against the Japanese. Chen participated in a secret meeting to negotiate peace terms with the Japanese, aided him in his escape to Hanoi, and helped her husband establish a new government after officially breaking ties with Chiang Kai-shek. She played an extensive role in helping her husband establish puppet governments in Guangdong and Guangzhou, while simultaneously advising him in his negotiations with the Japanese. Despite his initial involvement with the Kuomintang, Wang became staunchly anti-communist, switched his loyalty to the Japanese, and is known as one of the 10 big Hanxian, or traitors. Chen was also placed on this list as the #1 female traitor for both her commitment to her husband and because of her own political actions and decisions during the Second World War. In the end, the Kuomintang tried her for treason, but treated her more leniently because they thought she was simply a loyal wife, sentencing her to a life in prison rather than executing her. During her trial, she firmly defended her and her husband's actions. She refused to admit guilt, even after she had the opportunity for freedom if she confessed to the new communist government, continuing to do so until her death in a prison hospital. She claimed, "I am willing to live out my life in jail," further cementing herself as a headstrong, determined woman and political figure. Despite their different personalities and backgrounds, these women found their lives intertwined with one another as their political worlds profoundly changed around them. While some began as simple villagers, a sing-song girl, or as part of China's social elite, they all made their mark on China's history while ending up in completely different places. One killed during the Second World War, others forgotten as mere wives, with only one becoming one of China's most powerful women.